a lot of his tweets from the quotes and much more. Max joins us now on 365 Sports, athletic.com. So, Max, man, it seems like that there's a lot of finger-pointing going on with members of the media, columnists, writers, beat reporters of, like, who is what. And what is your sense right now of what you think the Big 12 is? Mac's been quoted. Yormark's been quoted. Jamie Pollard has been quoted. Gene Taylor's been quoted. What are your thoughts about the Big 12, and are they like vultures right now when it comes to the Pac-12?
Yeah, I think we're pretty status quo from last week, honestly, in terms of, I think on the Big 12 side, you're just kind of sitting back and waiting for some clarity on the Pac-12 situation here. I think what Mac has said on your show, that they're ready, is about the best way you can put it still at this point. And talking with people, in Kansas City here at the Big 12 tournament, I think what we reported last Friday, I think is still the case. I think there's still very, a lot of curiosity about what's going to happen next in the Pac-12. I think we're going to get some clarity on that really within the next 2 weeks in terms of what that media rights offer looks like. And I think that there's still, the contact continues. I think there's still some optimism here that, they have a chance to pull the Four Corner schools, or at least a few of them. And so I think that stuff's got to play out here a little bit. And honestly, I think there's really not much more that Brett Yormark or anyone in the Big 12 needs to say. I think everyone is just right now we need to just really get to the bottom of, what is the offer and who are the partners for the Pac-12, and kind of how do their members respond to that?
Yeah, Max, it seems like there's just a lot of noise. You've kind of simplified it there. Like, what's the offer? What then? B is, how do people feel about that? And C is, if they're mad about it, then the Big 12 sitting here and they know what they can do if that's the case. But until A and B happen, C is just theoretical.
Yeah, and there's not even anything to negotiate here. Like, I think if the Big 12 is adding Pac-12 members, based on conversations I've had, I think they would come in as, I think Fox would support it and they'd be full share members. So I don't think there's like a money dynamic to this. Certainly with the Pac-12 deal coming up, like, there's not a complicated exit here, obviously, as we're seeing from USC and UCLA leaving. Like, there's not much to like haggle over here in terms of, do you want to come over to the Big 12? It's ultimately, and especially if the money is similar, bottom line, it's do those Pac-12 schools, do they believe in Brett Yormark and the vision he has for the future here, short term and long term, and do they want to be in the Big 12? I mean, this is not about twisting arms and trying to trick people into making that move. I think they've got to believe that in what the conference is doing, and that the future seems brighter in terms of what they're trying to achieve here over the rest of the decade.
Max, just from your perspective, you talked to Bob Bowlesby or heard him plenty of different times. I mean, you covered the college football scene in the Big 12 for a while. Brett Yormark's obviously a bit slicker, talks a bit faster, is a different part, of the country coming from, and just a different background. But what's obviously he does things his own way. It rubs some people wrong, and for others, it's exactly what the doctor ordered. But just what's kind of been your perception in comparison to other commissioners you've spoken to or talked with over the years, and kind of what you've seen from him on the first year on the job?
Yeah, it's really striking. I feel like in a lot of ways, Bob Bowlesby and Brett Yormark are kind of polar opposites. I mean, and just in terms of the way they go about the job, and that's absolutely not a diss on Bob Bowlesby, because I think he achieved a lot over his decade in charge, and like, it doesn't mean Bob did things the wrong way, but certainly this goes back to the Big 12 board and what were they looking for in their next commissioner. And I remember last spring I did a survey of our athletic subscribers who are Big 12 fans, and kind of asked them what was their perception of Bob Bowlesby, and I think that it was clear there's kind of at least perception, right? Like, there's a view that, like, they wish he was more aggressive, and I think that they got what they're looking for. If that was like your view of things, that the Big 12 was more reactive and not proactive enough, like, certainly this is what Brett Yormark was hired to do, and I think the Big 12 board did view things that way in terms of going in an alternative direction, and not someone who has like a long history as an AD or something like that. They got what they asked for with Brett Yormark, and I think it's been pretty impressive, all the things that he's done or gotten started here over the course of 7 months or so, and just like watching him at these conference tournaments, like the guy is he loves to put on events, and he's ultra detailed and ultra determined to do things his way, and it's been, but yeah, the contrast has been really kind of fascinating to watch that continue to play out.
And he was there in Kansas City, and you were obviously quoting a lot of what he said. What he said was not much different than anything else he has said recently. It just was validating that he hasn't changed his mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone needs to ask him, like, what is he looking for in an expansion candidate? We've all heard the same lines from July. I do think I think he did say pretty straight up. He never name dropped the Pac-12 over the course of those 18 minutes he was on the podium or whatever, but he did at least make it clear. He was asked directly about Gonzaga and made it clear that I think you can read between the lines what he's saying, that the Pac-12 opportunity certainly is the priority right now and figuring that out. And Gonzaga and maybe some of these other like more basketball focused ambitions, I think, are pretty secondary to that at the moment. I've heard that the talks with Gonzaga have all gone well, but I think that that's a little bit backburnered at the moment as they focus on whether they can make this deal happen.
Max Olson, theathletic.com with us, 365 Sports.
So, Max, what was it like to wander into a basketball tournament this week?
Oh, yeah. Definitely, like, not any basketball coaches or players recognize me, that's for sure. No relationships going on there. It's been a long time. I haven't been to a Big 12 basketball tournament since I was a college reporter covering Nebraska in the Big 12, so that's how long it's been. It was cool though. I mean, I think I hadn't been at T-Mobile Center in KC in a long time, and it's a great venue. They do a great job there. Like I am not surprised. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the Big 12 does stay there long term past the current deal, because I think that's just a great venue, and it's really interesting next year when you add 4 new fan bases, and they're also going to move the women's tournament over to the T-Mobile Center next year as well. So that like, I think as an event, you saw them start to roll out some of the things that they wanted to, that Yormark and the conference wanted to do this year. I think next year with 14 fan bases and like a year of experience for them in terms of putting this event on, I think it's going to be pretty cool to see next year for sure.
Next year is just going to be a wild year, man. That whole 14-team setup, the finale of OU Texas, the 4 new guys. It's just going to be a very unique year for the Big 12, no doubt about it. Max, you're circling back for just a moment. What were your thoughts when you saw the Utah AD speak out publicly? Just 4 words, but it's like that was all that needed to be said for certain people. It was like, all right, bing, period, on the end of the sentence. I don't know how often that happens. I can't really recall. I know Twitter wasn't necessarily a huge part of realignment stories from years and years ago, but did that perk your attention, or get your attention, I guess, at all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have enough time to get into the whole Twitter piece of Big 12 versus Pac-12
right.
and the way this is all played out here.
No, really, let's do it.
Really,
let's
since
do
last summer, like that's it's just been nuts. Like, and I understand. Like, I think the thing you got to keep in mind, I was thinking about this morning, and that's not to say like Utah to the Big 12 is dead. Like, I don't really know what to make of that. I understand the angst on the Pac-12 side about some of Dennis's reporting and just like kind of this the continued stories of like the big bad wolf coming to the Pac-12. Part of this is going on because of the silence on the Pac-12 side. George decided not to have a press conference in Las Vegas, which, like, I don't know that you can complain about like this cascaded negativity when you're not really doing anything publicly to combat it. But like, I think that like part of what makes this stuff a little bit nuttier is just, look, we all know Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, went on behind the scenes for a long time. And we know USC and UCLA, one day it just popped up, right? Like, obviously that was going on behind the scenes for a period of time. And, when the Big 12 was expanding, yeah, that was out there for a few weeks, but it was kind of, there wasn't any tug of war there. You knew where they wanted to be. And I just think this one's been different because it has played out like a lot more publicly for a longer period of time. And there's just kind of more pressure and more like, when there's not a lot of like clarity, then there's going to be kind of misinformation or rumors and stuff like that kind of fills that vacuum. And so like, I just think the way that this has gone, like, I'm sure Brett Yormark would love it if all this was kind of really happening quietly below the surface, behind the scenes, and nobody was paying attention to it. But that's just not how this thing has gone. And I'm sure the next 2 weeks, there's probably going to be a lot more BS.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's from Daily. There was a couple of comments. Like there was one small column today about how Endeavor was feeding certain people. And then Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports CEO, says, listen, I work for that company. It's part of the company he worked for. He goes, that's not their MO. Stop.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point
where
I mean,
I can say I've not dealt with Endeavor at all. That's not, that's the one that person John Canzano is writing about is not somebody I know or deal with. And I think we've tried to report this thing pretty down the middle all along. And I think it's interesting. I understand it, though. Like, it's emotionally convenient to be like, the Pac-12 is in this situation because there's some bad guy out there who's trying to stir up trouble. But obviously, like, I think that, if this ends up happening, like, I certainly understand that Pac-12 folks would probably paint Brett Yormark and Endeavor, all them, as the bad guys that made this happen. But I think you have to really take a more critical look at how did the Pac-12 even get in this situation. And I certainly don't think that, stories that appear on CBS Sports or The Athletic or anything like that are going to sway whether these things happen or not.
Well, and we also brought this up before we came on with you, and we appreciate your time, is that the Pac-12 stole Colorado from the Big 12. So we've been there before. It's not like other conferences haven't looked at other conferences. It's just right now, I guess it's the Pac-12 who's on the clock.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's, when there's reporting that, like, the Pac-12 is going to crumble or their demise is coming and all that stuff, like, I absolutely understand why that, like, elicits, like, a really strong emotional reaction from people. And, like, clearly, like, the battle lines have been drawn on this stuff for quite a while. And, I certainly understand, like, the passion for it. And we appreciate it in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that people care about our coverage of it. But, I think it's maybe that kind of, I don't know. I don't know how the next few weeks will play out, but I can certainly understand why, like, people get so worked up about it and fearful and want to point fingers and all that.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Max Olson got a little basketball in his blood this week in Kansas City with us today on 365 Sports, and Grayson will join us in the next segment.